In 2018, Chris Williamson's podcast Modern Wisdom had just a few hundred downloads, but 5 years later, it now has over 300 million. And I think there are 3 life-changing lessons that we can learn from his story, successes, and future that, if you apply them to your daily life, will have a massive impact. This guy is pretty much changing the mainstream knowledge of psychology, and by the end of this video you will learn exactly why his podcast has seen meteoric growth, and what I will reveal, I think, will surprise you. But first, we have to ask the question, who is Chris Williamson?
I got delivered what I call a fatal dose of contrast. I saw, staring me in the face, inescapable, a team of 13 other people who were the person that I'd been pretending to be for a decade.
Born within a small town in the northeast of England, Chris grew up as an only child and often felt very misunderstood and outcast throughout his early years.
Like loneliness, like again, there wasn't even any glory or triumph in the loneliness or in the like solitary nature. It was very mundane, very vanilla sadness. It wasn't bullying, it was isolation, I think. It was being lonely.
Right.
And that was primarily what was causing me to be sad throughout school.
But much of that changed as he entered university. He put on a little bit of muscle from going to the gym and entered a new chapter of life as that big name on campus party boy that he always wanted to be. Throughout his 20s, Chris ran a nightlife business with a friend that he met at university and achieved a very decent level of success on that path, with everything leading up to his appearance on the first season of Love Island in 2015. Now, this reality show is probably the epitome of degenerate television. There's basically a few weeks each summer where every teenager and young person sits down to lose a few brain cells from 9 till 10 each evening. But there's something that's incredibly interesting about Chris's story, and that is that despite he achieved all the things that young men think they want, the money, the status, the girls, he, inside, was still that little misunderstood only child who didn't know who he wanted to be. And from reflecting on this, he realized that for many years, he was simply playing a role.
Me realizing that the girls that I was sleeping with, or the money that I was making, or the club nights that I was running, is that really the highest calling that I have for myself? Is the fact that I've been on a reality TV show going to be my crowning achievement? Is this what I'm bringing to the world? Persona is incapable of receiving love. It can only receive praise. If you're playing a role, any of the accolades that you get and any of the care that people give toward you isn't going to hit you existentially.
So while he was in the Love Island villa at the peak of party boy experience, he decided he wanted to make some changes. And Chris then began the metamorphosis into the podcaster, psychologist, philosopher that we know today, starting his show Modern Wisdom back in 2018.
You alright? How you doing? Very good, thank you. How are you?
Reset your circadian rhythm by exposing your eyes to light. 1,000 days without drinking alcohol. This can be some journaling. It's great for positive mentalities.
As soon as I'm up, I'm making a beeline for daylight.
Or it can be some meditation.
The truth is, a lot of us play roles and act out personas in our lives. But if there's something that Chris's metamorphosis can teach us, it's that we can change and we can embark on a more authentic path, even if it doesn't feel like it. Chris was at the peak of one life, and he then completely changed and started at square one within another. He was tired of having poor mental and physical health. He was tired of not being able to focus and think clearly. He was tired of being someone that he wasn't. And so he changed. And you can too.
Heroes and villains always have the same backstory, pain. The difference is what they choose to do about it. Villain says, the world hurt me, I'll hurt it back. The hero says, the world hurt me, I'm not going to let it hurt anybody else. Heroes use pain, villains are used by it.
So that somewhat leads us up to the present day, where we're now going to talk about the incredible success of Modern Wisdom. The show has seen an exponential rise in viewership, production quality, big name guests, and positive notoriety. And I think it's super valuable to look at the mindset frames that Chris has used to get the show to where it is today. And from what I've seen, Chris seems to attribute his philosophies behind his hard work to the ideas from a book written by Steven Pressfield called Turning Pro.
And I made the commitment in about May of 2020 to turn pro, to use Stephen Pressfield language. Read The War of Art, which everybody needs to check out. I decided I want to stop dicking about. Let's do this properly. So made the commitment.
Turning pro is about consistent, persistent hard work, because that is what is required of you to get the job done. You know, in the majority of cases, I see success or achieving anything like it's an iceberg. The tip of the iceberg, the 10 to 15% that is above the surface of the water, represents the big moments in people's careers that everybody can see. For Chris, this is the exponential rise of the podcast. It's him appearing on Joe Rogan, it's him reaching 1 million subscribers, it's him doing interviews with people like David Goggins, Jocko Willink, Andrew Huberman, and Chris Bumstead. But the crucial bit that you don't see is what's below the surface. The 85% of the iceberg that is the grinding work that you do in the dark. The hours of listening back to old podcasts, the hours of researching guests, the hours working with a speech coach and getting 3 episodes out a week for years. And for Chris, turning pro meant focusing on the parts of the iceberg that are underneath the surface, because only when that is done can you enjoy the bits that everybody sees. You know, all of us have a thing that we want in our lives. You might want to be an actor or an artist or a content creator. You might want to improve your dating life or your relationships. You might want to do better at work or get better grades at school. It doesn't matter. We all have something. And if this thing in your life isn't going how you'd like it to, my only response would be, why don't you turn pro? What are the parts of the iceberg underneath the surface that you are neglecting to do that would move the needle forward, even though it's not glamorous and even though nobody else will see it? Because at the end of the day, Chris's fast growth over the last 12 months is simply a consequence of the 4 years of grueling hard work that he did turning pro when no one else was watching.
This is something that I've actually relied on a little bit myself. Whenever I get to a low point where I think, why do I even bother? I just remind myself, this is where most people stop, and this is why they don't win.
Now, earlier in this video, I said that Chris Williamson is basically changing the mainstream knowledge of psychology, and this third point is going to explain why I think that. As modern wisdom continues to increase in popularity, Chris continues to have interesting guests from the field of psychology that his audience would never have heard from otherwise. Interviews with people like Adam Lane Smith, Gawinda Bogle, Louisa Perry, Corey Clark, David Kenrick, discussing things like evolutionary psychology, anthropology, cognitive biases, sexual selection, and a plethora of other deep psychological ideas. And I think this is brilliant. Hundreds of thousands of people are able to hear from the best people in their field about how to navigate the complexity of being human, and to quote Chris, improve the inner texture of their mind. And because of Chris's party boy past, I'm calling this new genre of education bro psychology, or bro psych for short. Like bro science, a popular term coined by the fitness industry, bro psych involves people absorbing the principles and lessons of the field of psychology and trying to simplify them so they can apply them to their own lives to improve their mental health and performance. And I think, as podcasts like Modern Wisdom grow, bro psych as an educational platform will continue to grow exponentially. Chris Williamson is a kind of younger gym bro version of the Joe Rogans, Jordan Petersons, and Tim Ferrisses that started this new online education movement. And I think there is no upper limit of how far this can go into the future.
In order to transcend your programming, you have to become aware of it. And the choice that you have when it comes to happiness in life is between becoming aware of your mental afflictions or the discomfort of becoming ruled by them. Social proof happens on an individual level too, right? I think one of the most interesting insights that I took from your book was the understanding of the overperception and the underperception bias. You love posting threads of ugly psychology truths on the internet. Why should anyone care about behavioral science?
But beyond the 3 points I've made in this video, I think there is a single overarching message that we can get from Chris Williamson's work. And it came to me the other day when I was watching a video called The Gym Bro 2.0 by a great YouTuber called Jimmy the Giant. And I scrolled down to the comment section and I saw a comment by a massive self-improvement YouTuber called Hamza that simply said, "The intellectual Chad is the new meta." And I think that sums up the whole moral of what I've been trying to communicate in this video in some way. Now, if you don't know, Chad is a colloquial term that generally describes a guy who navigates life like his shit doesn't stink. There are negative connotations of narcissism and being a gym bro and not caring about anyone but yourself. And that's not what I am campaigning for here whatsoever. The intellectual Chad is a new wave of young person. It is someone who recognizes the importance of looking after their mental and physical health through being in great shape and trying to be happy. But it is also someone who takes themselves and their lives seriously. And they feel that they are on a quest for knowledge and truth and purpose and personal responsibility. They are also delaying gratification and trying to make things better for their future self, but also the community and the wider society around them. The intellectual Chad is the new meta, i.e. the most effective tactic available to navigate the modern world. And the best thing is, everybody can learn the principles. We're so lucky to have people like Chris Williamson as role models for those who can reject an inauthentic, pleasure-seeking life and become the psychologist, philosopher that the modern world needs. And I think that is a truly beautiful thing. Now, if you clicked on this video because, like me, you're a big fan of Chris Williamson, I want to say thank you for giving me your time and attention. My name is Joel. I make videos about psychology and how that can link to self-improvement. If you do want to learn some cool ideas about how we can, to quote Chris, improve the inner texture of their mind, you can start on this video here, which I worked pretty hard on. And finally, I just want to say, Chris Williamson, if you ever somehow see this video, I just want to say a massive thank you, because you are a humongous inspiration to me. And I'm just truly grateful for all the work that you do.